Imagine compressing 300,000 years of human history into a single 24-hour day. For the first 23 hours and 40 minutes, we're just hunting, gathering, and surviving. Agriculture? That doesn't show up until 11:56 p.m. The pyramids? 11:58, Jesus Christ? 11:59, the entire modern world, everything you know, from smartphones to space stations, happens in the last 12 seconds before midnight. We are living in the final blink of human existence. And somehow, in that blink, we went from scratching in the dirt to landing on the moon. Welcome back. Today, we're doing something ambitious, maybe even a little crazy. We're going to tell the entire story of human civilization in 30 minutes. From our origins in Africa to the digital age you're watching this video in right now. This isn't just a history lesson. It's the story of how a bunch of hairless apes figured out farming, invented writing, built empires, discovered science, and somehow didn't destroy themselves in the process. Yet. We'll see how random chance, human ingenuity, and sometimes pure stupidity shaped everything from ancient Mesopotamia to modern America. And by the end, you'll understand how all of it, all of human progress, connects to your life today. If you're ready for the fastest history lesson you've ever had, hit that subscribe button. Let's compress 300,000 years into half an hour. Let's begin at the beginning. Our story starts in Africa, roughly 300,000 years ago. Homo sapiens, that's us, emerge as a species. But here's the thing, for the vast majority of our existence, we were absolutely unremarkable. We weren't the strongest animals. We weren't the fastest. We didn't have claws, fangs, or armor. What we had were opposable thumbs, the ability to sweat efficiently, and brains that were getting suspiciously large for our body size. For 290,000 years, 97% of human history, we lived as hunter-gatherers. Small bands of maybe 50 to 150 people, constantly moving, following animal herds and seasonal plants. But around 70,000 years ago, something changed. Anthropologists call it the cognitive revolution. Our brains didn't get bigger, they got better. We developed complex language. Not just, lion behind you, run, but abstract concepts. We could tell stories. Share information. Plan for the future. Imagine things that didn't exist. Think about that. A lion can't imagine a better way to hunt. A beaver can't dream of building a different kind of dam. But humans? We could sit around a fire and say, what if we made a trap that does the hunting for us? This ability to imagine and communicate complex ideas was our superpower. With our new cognitive abilities, we started spreading. Out of Africa, into the Middle East, then Asia, Europe, and eventually across a land bridge into the Americas. By 12,000 years ago, humans had colonized every continent except Antarctica. Everywhere we went, something interesting happened, the megafauna disappeared. Giant ground sloths in South America. Woolly mammoths in Europe. Massive kangaroos in Australia. Scientists still debate exactly why, but human arrival and mass extinction seem suspiciously correlated. We were good at surviving. Maybe too good. Then, around 10,000 BC, humans made what might be history's most consequential decision. In several places around the world, the Fertile Crescent, China, Mesoamerica, people independently discovered agriculture. Instead of following food, we grew it. This seems like obvious progress, right? Stable food supply, settle down, build civilization. But here's the twist, for most individuals, agriculture made life worse. Hunter-gatherers worked maybe 3 to 4 hours a day and ate diverse diets. Early farmers worked from sunrise to sunset, ate mostly grains, suffered from malnutrition, and lived in close quarters where diseases spread easily. Skeletons show they were shorter, less healthy, and died younger. So why did we do it? Because agriculture could support way more people. A hunter-gatherer band is 50 people. An agricultural village is 500. Then 5,000. Then 50,000. We traded individual well-being for collective success. And there was no going back. Once you have 500 people dependent on farmed wheat, you can't just return to hunting and gathering. Agriculture meant staying in one place. Permanent settlements. Storage of surplus food. And with surplus comes specialization. Not everyone needs to farm. Some people can make pottery. Others can make tools. Someone can organize trade. Someone else can keep track of who owns what. And that last part? That required a new invention, writing. By 3000 BC, in Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, Sumerians developed cuneiform, one of humanity's first writing systems. Initially just for accounting. Farmer A owes the temple 10 bushels of wheat. Boring stuff. But revolutionary. Because now information could outlive the person who knew it. Knowledge could accumulate across generations. With writing, permanent settlements, specialized labor, and organized religion, we had the ingredients for something new, civilization. Once humans figured out the civilization formula, it spread fast. Within a few centuries, major civilizations emerged independently around the world. Egypt along the Nile. The Indus Valley in modern Pakistan. The Yellow River in China. Olmecs in Mesoamerica. Each discovered that rivers plus agriculture plus organization equals civilization. Egypt built pyramids, engineering marvels that still blow our minds 4,500 years later. They developed medicine, mathematics, and a form of writing called hieroglyphics. Their civilization lasted 3,000 years. 3,000 years. For perspective, that's 15 times longer than the United States has existed. Meanwhile in Mesopotamia, empires rose and fell like waves. Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians. Each one conquering the last, adopting their innovations, adding new ones. Hammurabi's Code, one of the first written legal systems. The idea that laws should be public, consistent, and written down was revolutionary. An eye for an eye sounds brutal to us, but it was progress from, I'll kill your entire family for insulting me. By 1200 BC, the Mediterranean world was interconnected. Trade networks linked Egypt, the Hittites in Turkey, Mycenaean Greece, and various Canaanite city-states. Bronze weapons and tools defined the age. Then everything collapsed. Within about 50 years, most major Bronze Age civilizations fell. Cities burned. Writing systems disappeared. Trade networks broke down. We still don't know exactly why. Climate change? Invasions by sea peoples? Systems too complex and fragile? Probably all of the above. It was humanity's first taste of how fragile civilization really is. But humans are resilient. After a dark age, new civilizations emerged. And this time, they brought new ideas. In Greece, small city-states experimented with something radical, democracy. In Athens, citizens, male citizens who owned property, could vote on laws and leaders. It was imperfect and limited, but the idea that people could govern themselves? That was new. Greek philosophers asked big questions. Socrates, how should we live? Plato, what is justice? Aristotle, how does the world actually work? They weren't the first to wonder, but they were the first to write it all down and debate it systematically. Western philosophy was born. Meanwhile, to the west, Rome was building an empire. Rome started as a small Italian city-state. Through military genius, engineering excellence, and smart politics, they conquered the entire Mediterranean world. At its peak, the Roman Empire stretched from Britain to Mesopotamia, from Germany to North Africa. 50 million people. A quarter of the world's population. Rome gave us roads and aqueducts that still stand. Legal systems that influenced all of Western law. The calendar we still use. The idea of citizenship and civic duty. Latin, which evolved into French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. But here's what's wild, to a Roman citizen in 100 AD, the empire felt eternal. It had always been there and always would be. They couldn't imagine it ending. While empires rose and fell, something else was happening, the emergence of major religions that would shape the next 2,000 years. Judaism had been around for centuries, but around 0 AD, technically 4 to 6 BC, but that's another story. A Jewish preacher named Jesus started a movement that would become Christianity. In Arabia in the 600s AD, Muhammad would found Islam. Meanwhile, in India, Buddhism had spread from the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, and Hinduism evolved from even older traditions. In China, Confucius and Laozi laid foundations for philosophies that would guide Chinese civilization. These weren't just about worship. They were complete systems for organizing society, defining morality, and giving meaning to human existence. They offered something empires couldn't, answers to why we're here and what happens after we die. By 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. Barbarian invasions, economic crisis, political instability, and the simple fact that it had gotten too big to effectively govern. The eternal empire ended. Europe fragmented into countless small kingdoms. Learning declined. Trade decreased. Population fell. The classical age was over. The medieval period was beginning. Here's what you probably learned: the Middle Ages were the Dark Ages. Europe was backward, religion suppressed science, everyone was a peasant, and nothing happened for 1,000 years. That's mostly wrong. Yes, Western Europe fragmented and became less centralized. But that's not the same as civilization collapsing. The Catholic Church became the unifying force. Monasteries preserved ancient texts. Universities were founded: Bologna, Oxford, Paris, where theology, philosophy, and natural science were studied. The feudal system emerged. Lords, vassals, serfs. It was hierarchical and often brutal, but it provided local stability in a world without strong central governments. And here's the key: Europe wasn't the center of the world anymore. While Europe struggled, the Islamic world flourished. After Muhammad's death, Islamic caliphates expanded rapidly across the Middle East, North Africa, Spain, and into Central Asia. This wasn't just military conquest, it was a cultural explosion. Baghdad became the world's intellectual center. The House of Wisdom attracted scholars who translated Greek, Persian, and Indian texts into Arabic. They didn't just preserve ancient knowledge, they expanded it. Islamic scholars invented algebra, from the Arabic al-jabr. They made massive advances in astronomy, medicine, and chemistry. The numbers we use? Arabic numerals, adopted from India but spread by Islamic mathematicians. When Europeans were slowly recovering, Islamic civilization was reaching heights Rome never achieved. And then there's China. During the Tang and Song dynasties, roughly 600–1300 AD, China was the most advanced civilization on Earth. Not even close. They invented gunpowder, the compass, printing, centuries before Gutenberg, paper money, advanced agricultural techniques. Chinese cities had populations over 1 million when London had 50,000. Their government ran on meritocratic civil service exams. Their economy was sophisticated and vast. If an alien visited Earth in 1000 AD and had to bet on which civilization would dominate the future, they'd pick China. Wouldn't even be close. In the 1200s, Genghis Khan and the Mongols exploded out of Central Asia and conquered the largest land empire in history. From Korea to Eastern Europe. From Siberia to Vietnam. The Mongol conquests were devastatingly brutal. Cities were wiped out. Millions died. But the Mongol Empire also connected the world like never before. The Silk Road flourished under Mongol protection. Ideas, technologies, and goods flowed between East and West. Chinese inventions reached Europe. Islamic knowledge spread further. Globalization began not with ships, but with horses. Then, in 1347, death arrived in Europe. The Black Death, bubonic plague, killed between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe's population in just 5 years. In some cities, 60 to 70% died. Entire villages were wiped out. It was one of humanity's worst catastrophes. But paradoxically, it changed Europe for the better. With so many dead, labor became valuable. Peasants could demand wages. The feudal system weakened. Social mobility increased. The rigid medieval order began to crack. And with that crack, something new could grow. Around 1500, multiple revolutions happened nearly simultaneously. Together, they created the modern world. In Italy, wealthy merchant families funded a cultural explosion. Artists, thinkers, and inventors looked back to classical Greece and Rome for inspiration. Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa and designed helicopters. That didn't work, but still. Michelangelo sculpted David and painted the Sistine Chapel. Machiavelli wrote about politics as it really worked, not as people wished it worked. Humanism emerged, the idea that human beings, not just God, were worthy subjects of study and celebration. In 1440, Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press with movable type. This is hard to overstate. Before printing, books were hand-copied. Expensive. Rare. Knowledge was controlled by elites. After printing, books became relatively cheap. Ideas spread rapidly. A pamphlet written in Germany could be read in England weeks later. The Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, the Enlightenment, none happened without printing. Information wanted to be free. Now it could be. Europeans, late to the global party, decided to find new trade routes to Asia. Columbus sailed west and stumbled onto the Americas, never realizing he hadn't reached Asia. What followed was both awe-inspiring and horrific. European ships connected the world. The Columbian exchange transferred crops, animals, diseases, and people between hemispheres. Potatoes from America fed European population growth. Wheat and horses transformed American landscapes. But Europeans also brought smallpox, measles, and other diseases that killed up to 90% of Native American populations. Then they brought enslaved Africans to replace that labor. The Atlantic slave trade was one of history's greatest atrocities, millions killed, millions more enslaved, whole societies destroyed. Globalization's dark side was very dark indeed. In the 1500s and 1600s, Europeans made a radical decision. Instead of relying on ancient texts and religious authority, let's actually test things. Copernicus said Earth orbits the Sun. Galileo used a telescope to prove it. Newton discovered the laws of motion and gravity. The scientific method emerged: observe, hypothesize, test, revise. For the first time, humans had a reliable way to understand the natural world. Knowledge exploded. The scientific method's success inspired people to apply reason to society and politics. If we can figure out gravity, can't we figure out the best form of government? John Locke argued for natural rights and government by consent. Voltaire championed religious tolerance. Rousseau explored social contracts. These weren't just abstract philosophy. These ideas would fuel revolutions. In 1776, American colonists declared independence, claiming all men are created equal and have rights governments can't take away. In 1789, the French Revolution went further, overthrowing monarchy entirely and attempting to remake society based on reason. Both were messy. The French Revolution descended into terror. The American one kept slavery. But the ideas, democracy, human rights, government by consent, were out of the bottle. Monarchy and aristocracy suddenly had to justify themselves. And they couldn't. For all of human history, power came from muscles, human or animal. You wanted to move something? You pushed it, or a horse pulled it. Then Britain figured out how to turn coal into motion. Steam engines powered by coal could do the work of hundreds of men. Factories replaced workshops. Machines replaced craftsmen. In 1800, most people worked in agriculture. By 1900, most worked in factories. Cities exploded. London went from 1 million to 6.5 million in a century. Life changed faster than ever before. Your great-grandfather was a farmer. Your grandfather worked in a factory. You work in an office. The Industrial Revolution brought mass production and consumer goods. Railroads shrinking distance. Telegraph enabling instant communication. Medicine extending lifespans. Public education spreading literacy. But also urban poverty and slums. Child labor in dangerous factories. Pollution choking cities. Exploitation of workers. Progress, but messy. Industrial powers needed resources and markets. Solution? Colonize the rest of the world. By 1900, European powers controlled most of Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. They justified it with racist ideologies about civilizing inferior peoples. In reality, it was exploitation and extraction. This colonial system contained tensions that would explode in the 20th century. World War I, 1914 to 1918, shattered the old European order. Machine guns, poison gas, and artillery killed millions. Empires collapsed. The modern Middle East was carved up by European powers, creating problems that still plague us. 20 years later, World War II, 1939 to 1945, killed even more. The Holocaust murdered 6 million Jews. Nuclear weapons incinerated 2 Japanese cities. 70 million people died. Humanity had gained the power to destroy itself completely. After World War II, 2 superpowers emerged, the United States and Soviet Union. Capitalism versus communism. Democracy versus authoritarianism. For 45 years, they competed without directly fighting, because nukes. But their proxy wars killed millions in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. Meanwhile, European colonies demanded independence. India, Indonesia, Ghana, Algeria, dozens of new nations emerged. The colonial empires built over centuries collapsed in decades. In the late 20th century, computers and the internet created another revolution. Information became instantly accessible. Communication became global. Your smartphone has more computing power than the machines that sent humans to the moon. We're living through changes as fundamental as agriculture or industrialization. Except it's happening faster. So that's it. 300,000 years in 30 minutes. From African savannas to Sumerian cities. From Roman roads to Chinese dynasties. From Renaissance Italy to the Industrial Revolution. From world wars to the Internet age. If there's a pattern, it's this: humans are incredibly good at solving problems and creating new ones in the process. Agriculture solved hunger but created inequality and war. Writing preserved knowledge but concentrated power. Industry created wealth but also pollution and exploitation. The Internet connected us but also spread misinformation. We've never had pure progress. It's always complicated. Today, in 2024, humanity faces challenges our ancestors couldn't imagine. Climate change. Nuclear weapons. Artificial intelligence. Potential pandemics. But we also have advantages they couldn't imagine. Global communication. Scientific knowledge. Technology. The accumulated wisdom of 300,000 years. Here's what history teaches: humans are resilient, creative, and flawed. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and collapses. We've built civilizations, created beauty, and pushed the boundaries of knowledge. We're the same species that lived in caves and painted on walls. We're the same species that split the atom and landed on the moon. The future isn't written. It never was. Every generation inherits problems and creates solutions. Now it's our turn. If you made it this far, thanks for taking this journey through human history. If you enjoyed this compressed timeline, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history, science, and the big questions. Drop a comment: what era would you have wanted to live in? Or what did I get wrong? I'm always learning, and history is always being rewritten as we discover new things. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.